So I would like to invite Mac Turck from FirstMark Capital up to the stage. For those who might be interested in the other breakout room, Dana Lupton from Questex Media is going to be talking about hosted buyer events. And Matt, Don Pepper, I think on his blog today, was talking about refrigerator magnets that now have a button, and you can order pizza with a button. So I think that ties directly into, finally, an Internet of Things I can relate to. So I'm really excited about your talk.
That's what it's all about. It's going to be a billion-dollar business right here. Cool. And this is the clicker?
The green button.
Yep. Cool. Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Turck, and excited to be here, excited to be talking about a topic that I'm particularly passionate about, which is this emerging world of the Internet of Things. So by way of background, so I'm a VC, I'm a venture capitalist, I'm at FirstMark Capital, which is one of the great firms out there based here in New York. So professionally, I invest in early stage tech companies, and I've made a couple of recent investments in the space. So I'm, it's something that I'm particularly involved in. I run a couple of large tech community events here. There's one that's focused on big data, so you heard about big data in healthcare, but there's one that's called Data-Driven NYC. And the other one that I started more recently is called Hardwired NYC. And if any of you guys are here in New York, interested in the topic, it's actually a fantastic forum to keep learning about the Internet of Things, 3D printing, open hardware, all this emerging world of the physical and the digital connecting. So I would encourage you to attend. And I've written about the space. If you look up my name, there's a couple of things in TechCrunch that I wrote about. One was a landscape of the Internet of Things, which is a good introductory piece, and another one was more specifically about home automation. So our physical world is changing, or perhaps more precisely, our interaction with our physical world is changing, arguably faster than ever before. As you guys know, I've experienced, over the last couple of years, it's been like this weird apparition of all these little objects that came out of nowhere, those connected devices. And some of them have been those like fitness bands, like there's a jawbone up on the screen, but the connected camera, the connected lock, and even the connected scale that can tweet your weight, if you're a fan of public shaming. And our world is starting to look very much like a sci-fi movie. And it's kind of funny, right, how quickly this is accelerating. We all grew up watching sci-fi movies, and back then it sort of felt like it was a generation or two generations away. But even 5 years ago, a lot of this world felt like it was still a generation away. And now suddenly we are at this very interesting moment in time when all of this seems to be happening, and it's happening quickly, and it's happening all at the same time. So we are starting to live in a world where we have drones flying around, where cars don't have drivers, where robotics are starting to be very interesting, very powerful products. The one on the bottom corner here is a company called Boston Dynamics that Google bought recently. And if you never came across the product, I would encourage you to go to YouTube and just look up Boston Dynamics. So this is a dog, a robotic dog, and it's the most fascinating, the most terrifying, perhaps the most creepy thing I've ever seen. It's a robot that actually walks like a dog, walks across all sorts of terrain. There's a moment in one of the main videos where you see a guy kicking the dog to try and make it fall, and you see the legs of the dog sort of reconfiguring on the spot so it can regain its balance, and it gives the whole thing a feeling of complete invincibility that gives you a sense like we're there. It's the rise of the machines. It's actually happening right now. And it's only accelerating. So we talked about big data and health in the very interesting talk right before. Those pills here already exist. They're made by a company called Proteus. Those are connected pills that you ingest and which transmit data about what's going on inside of you to your mobile phone or to the mobile phone of the healthcare provider. The lens here is a project that was announced by Google X, which is the lab of Google maybe a couple of weeks ago, and that's a glucose monitor. So on this contact lens, you have a microchip, a microtransmitter, a micro antenna, and that senses your glucose level through your tears and transmit that data. And the stuff at the bottom is, even crazier. So there's been this whole field of emerging field of mind-to-computer interaction. So being able to interact with your computer through a bando sensor that senses what you want to do without actually typing anything. Well, that's already so last year. The new thing now is mind-to-mind interaction. So like in the picture here, and that's very recent stuff, you can look it up. This is a lab at Harvard University where the guy, as you can see here, is actually interacting with the mind of the rat that's on the right side of the picture. And it's, it's very crude, it's very simple, very basic, but this is happening. So this is a world we are starting to live in. And at first, a lot of this feels like toys, like science projects. We make jokes about it, but it's starting to feel very real. And to me, the Nest acquisition is very interesting in that it's the first validation point, if you want, about this whole industry, right? So, even a couple of years ago, people were like, oh, the Nest, ha ha ha, it's funny. It's like a thermostat. Who cares about a thermostat? And by the way, why on earth is the guy who designed the iPod wasting his time building a completely trivial, sort of unloved type product? But the acquisition from that perspective is a great validation point in that it's starting to prove that there is a fantastic market there. So the Nest acquisition with all the rest is starting to helping to create quite a bit of a hype around the area. So sort of big data was like the big thing, like in 2011, 2012. By the way, I think it's only going to start continue accelerating. It's going to be huge. But it was sort of like the buzzy term of the last couple of years. And now the Internet of Things, sort of the buzzy term of 2013 and 2014. And then you see like all the vendors trying to come up with the biggest possible estimate that they can. But what's clear is that it's a market that is going to be measured in trillions rather than billions. So. To me, what's fundamentally interesting here is that beyond the hype, there is a fundamental, transformational, secular trend that is just starting and that's going to last for the next few years. So if you think about the history of the internet, the first wave of the internet was basically the creation of the internet itself, which was already connecting computers to the network. Then the next stage, a few years later, was Internet 2.0, Web 2.0, and that was really about connecting people to people through the internet. So that was the creation of all the networks and the marketplace. So from Friendster to MySpace to Facebook, what have you, Dig, YouTube, Twitter, all those things. And I think that we are, through the Internet of Things, essentially entering the third phase of development of the Internet, which is really, OK, we connected the computers, we connected people, now let's connect everything else. And this is that reality that all those terms that are appearing are trying to capture. So Internet of Things is the expression that's the most used. So it was created, invented in '99, so it's not exactly new. But Cisco is calling this the Internet of Everything. GE is calling this the industrial internet, more for the B2B part. People talk about connected devices. You hear people talking about machine-to-machine as well. And it's technically actually a part of this. It's the underlying foundational network for it. But people are starting to use the term quite interchangeably. Those terms are, it's one of the, Internet of Things is one of those terms that is good enough, but is not actually great at capturing what all of this is. First of all, because it's not just about things. With connectors, you can connect just about everything, whether that's livestock or, pets or babies or your child. it's also not just the internet. In fact, most of the Internet of Things is going through protocols, M2M protocols. The most famous and most used ones are Zigbee and Z-Wave. And perhaps most importantly, it's not just things. It's not just gadgets. Things is one of those terms that's sort of diminutive. The consumer Internet of Things is absolutely a great market, and it's great for also in that it captures imaginations. But to me, it's almost thinking of the Internet of Things as all those fitness devices is almost missing the point, because the real action in the real market to me is going to be in the enterprise aspect of this. And I think we should all collectively start thinking about the Internet of Things as about what it's going to be doing in factories, smart grids, hospitals, and transportation systems. So while the terms may be somewhat imperfect, there is an underlying reality to all of this, which is quite transformational and quite exciting. So the fundamental concept to understand here is that once you stick a sensor on a physical object or on a person or livestock, as we mentioned, everything becomes data. And that has a number of different consequences. So one of which, the first of which, is that everything becomes quantifiable. So whether that's trivial stuff like in this picture, where maybe stuff that you didn't care about, like how many steps your dog has taken, or whether you need to water your plant, or that type of things. But it could also be utilization rate of your jet engine in real time at massive scale. It could be the location of your machine as it is shipped around the world. That type of thing. So one-way interaction, meaning that all the sensors send data to the network. The second aspect is that it works both ways. So you send data to the network, but the network can send actions and data back to you. So this is the concept that everything becomes programmable. There is this idea of APIs for the real world, which is starting to appear and become something that many programmers and developers around the world are working, which is basically the concept that you can control and influence objects as well. And the third aspect of this, and perhaps the most interesting, is that everything becomes social. So every object ceases to be just an object in isolation and becomes part of a network of other objects. And there's many ways this is interesting. One of which is sort of the almost obvious concept that everything can become part of a system. And that's the most obvious example of this is home automation, which at this stage is a little overused, but that's a very simple concept of, hey, I'm in my car, I'm getting close to my home, my garage door opens, my thermostat increases the temperature because it knows I'm going to be home soon, and switches on my favorite music. That type of thing. But the fundamental concept is every object is connected to the other object and influences the behavior of the object next to it. There's also a separate concept which is also very interesting, although not used as much, which is this general idea that every single object, because it is connected to the network, becomes smarter and smarter. So to give you an example, we invested in a company that's called Sprouting that is building a line of connected family products. The first one is a connected baby monitor. So just like the Nest, one of those trivial products that hasn't seen innovation in the last 20 years. But what's interesting about this as an example is that in single-player mode, you put a sensor in the form of a wristband on your baby, and you get data, and that's interesting. First of all, you know that your baby is still breathing, which is the most important thing in the world. But you also know you can quantify the sleep patterns, that type of thing. So that's interesting. But where it becomes truly interesting is when you think of the network of products, when you think about all the information that this type of product is going to be gathering about, in this case, all babies that will use a product. And You take all this data, you aggregate it on an anonymous basis at the cloud level, and you can run all sorts of fascinating data science on it that enables you to extract intelligent insights, make a recommendation. So the more products you have connected to that network, the smarter every single product becomes, which is a fascinating concept of, a physical product becomes not just a physical product, it becomes an intelligent product that gets smarter and smarter over time. We started talking about this a minute ago, but that's possibly the most important aspect here, which is that it's a global phenomenon. It's going to impact all industries, whether that's industries that have a physical component or not. Just to take an example in that list, just insurance is going to be completely transformed by that, right? So your car already knows how good a driver you are. So the data already exists. There's questions about how manufacturers and the insurance company are going to be using that data. But it's not just like the progressive telemetry type of system that you need to install. All cars which are connected already have that information. Your insurance company is going to know how healthy you are through all those devices. How is that going to change the equation? How is that going to change the ability to customize products to your specific behavior? Is one of the many ways this is going to change fundamentally how people think about those industries and those products. Another fundamentally important consequence of all of this is that every company is now becoming a software company or in an information company. So it's a trend that has been going on for a little while for those who follow the startup world, this concept like of software eating the world. But this is taking it to a whole next level. So for anyone that was at CES a few weeks ago, I'm sure you've noticed that there were a bunch of brands that typically you don't think of, consumer electronics brands, but a lot of those appearing on the floor with very prominent booth, whether it's Ford or in this case Pizza Hut. So Pizza Hut, can you think of anything that's more disconnected from technology? But those guys, and very rightly so, are starting to think of themselves as a technology company, where the product is about delivery, mobile, connected, information tracking, and all those things. And again, that's going to impact everyone, and everyone increasingly is going to start thinking of themselves as a technology company, where the IT department is not just something on the side, but that thinking will permeate the organization. So I want to spend a few minutes quickly to talk about why this is happening now. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the term was invented in 1999. There was a false start in this industry where a bunch of companies tried to do Internet of Things products, and that sort of didn't lead anywhere. So why is it happening now? And I think there is a very interesting convergence of many things and enabling factors that are happening at the same time, which lead to that. So one of which is mobile phone. So sort of the cliche, it's become a cliche now to say that everybody has a supercomputer in their pocket, but it's actually true. And the mobile phone has very much become the remote control of the Internet of Things, where you get the data and where you have an opportunity to take action. Enabling technologies such as cloud and big data appeared at the same time, and a fundamental enabler here. So the whole concept of the Internet of Things is that the physical object itself is becoming dumber and dumber. So it used to be that the physical aspect and the intelligence aspect were joined together in the same product. And what's happening now is that those two things are getting separated. So the body of the object and the mind of the object, if that makes any sense, are separated. The body is obviously still very much in the physical world, but the mind of the object is in the cloud. It's all about getting data from that object, computing it in the cloud, aggregating it with other products, and doing all of this at scale and in real time. Software had its open source moment a few years ago. This has been happening to hardware as well. Arduino is an example that has been fundamentally important. Crowdfunding, more on the startup side, has been essential as well. So, VCs, people like me, used to hate hardware, still do to some extent, up until recently. Crowdfunding was essential in enabling hardware or Internet of Things entrepreneurs to start new products by providing seed funding, but also very interestingly by providing a real-time focus group of people interested in the product that would that provided feedback about what they liked or didn't like about the product. So those are two examples. Canary, which is a New York-based company, which was the most successful campaign on Indiegogo, and the Pebble Watch, which was a hit on Kickstarter. So both of those products were just essentially an idea. They put them on a crowdfunding platform. They got massively funded, and then they were able to start production right after that. 3D printing has been essential as well. Provides the amazing ability to create single products, custom products. So if you're a hardware entrepreneur, you're able to create prototypes very quickly and iterate sort of at the same speed as you would if you were a pure software entrepreneur. So all of this has resulted in a vast amount of activity in the space. So this is a chart I prepared a few months ago. I referred to a TechCrunch article at the beginning of this presentation. So that was sort of the center of that article. So the one thing you can take away from this is that the Internet of Things is having its big bang moment where there is an absolute explosion of activity in the space across lots of different areas. So we're going to spend a little bit of time going through some of those areas just to give you a flavor of what's happening in there. But before that, I wanted to make the point that it's an interesting market in that it's all about innovation, but for once, almost, the incumbents have been very active. And in fact, a lot of those large companies have been doing connected or Internet of Things products for the last few years before this new wave of startups appeared. And some of those companies continue to innovate very fast. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. So first of those areas that I'm personally excited about, so home automation is getting a lot of press. As the fundamental goal here, if you want to build a large company, I think, is to become the sort of central hub in the home. Different companies are going at it from different perspectives, with different strategies. There are companies that are sort of product first, like Nest. So Nest started with a product, did a great product, and then they launched a second product, and now they're connecting the two products, and that's that type of strategy. Other companies are trying to become the hub directly, and that's sort of the platform-first strategy. Companies like SmartThings, so Zonoff, or Aris, which is a Lowe's product. So very interesting space. To me, a little ahead of itself, getting probably a little more press than it probably deserves, although it's super interesting. But the fundamental need for home automation product is, to me, is still a question. I think it's increasing, but we will see how that shakes up. Wearables is another area that's getting tons and tons of attention. So again, for anyone that was at CES a few weeks ago, it was almost funny. There were just so many wearables vendors, and you see people starting to wear multiple bands, and it's pretty clear that we're all going to be running out of sort of real estate on our arms to be like wearing all those bands, and so we're going to have to be creative, like maybe Cayenne Woman style, to wear them in other places. But the interesting thing is that while there are tons and tons of different products, it still feels early and still feels like the wearable space is waiting for its iPhone moment when somebody comes up with something that will be a real sort of step function or big step ahead to provide a better product. And by the way, it's not just consumer wearables. I think wearables is spreading to also the different areas around sort of workforce tracking, health, wellness, more from a pure sort of healthcare system, which I find very interesting. The industrial internet is an area I'm particularly excited about. We alluded to it earlier. Just to drive the point home, just to give you a concrete example, a company in which we're not investors, but I find very interesting, called Sight Machine, which is using computer vision in factories for quality assurance that enables basically to monitor what's going on and make sure that products are being made following a specific process, and that's done without any kind of human intervention. I think a lot of things like that are going to be appearing. It's less glamorous. It's actually harder to do because a manufacturing context is there's all sorts of problems around connectivity and temperature and all those things. But I think that's going to be an area that's going to be exploding. Robotics, as I mentioned, I think is having its moment. So that's drones, drones that are flying. That's actually drones which are sailing now. There's I don't know if you guys saw this, but there's drones that sail around the world. They're capturing all sorts of like ocean-related information. So the first project is for sharks, but I think the moment that a lot of people have been waiting for is starting to happen in robotics. Lots of things happening around the developer ecosystem as well. It's sort of like the natural progression of a space, there's a lot of people that are building products, and now there's all those guys who are building very interesting pieces of the ecosystem to enable the companies to build better products, better, faster, cheaper, and I think that's going to be an area that's going to be exploding as well. Security is going to be a huge problem and a huge opportunity. So this search engine is something that freaks me out, freaks everybody out. Shodan that enables you to basically find any kind of connected object just by running searches. So if there's a search engine that enables people to do that very easily, you can only imagine how hackers are going to be able to access this information. As always in security, there's always a problem, a solution, a problem, solution, problem, solution. So it's going to be a great source of opportunity for many people. I think there's going to be plenty of things happening in the infrastructure level as well. So the funny thing is that everybody talks about the Internet of Things, but like right now it's sort of more like the Internet of my living room. Everything is connected, but in my house. And to me, that's not the end game, right? The end game is a global network. So whether that's first across a city or then across a country, but it has to be a global network, and somebody's going to build something gigantic in the space. And it's very unclear whether that network is going to be the internet or whether there's going to be something else. So just to close, what happens next? I think it's an area that's only going to get more exciting, more fun. There's going to be more startups, more funding, more exits. On the bad side, I think there's going to be a lot of casualties. It's a natural cycle of innovation. Hardware is hard. It's extremely difficult to create a hardware product. If you're a large company, but even more so if you're a startup, I think there's going to be a lot of those crowd-funded projects that eventually will not be able to deliver. There's going to be a lot of funded companies, VC-funded companies that will not be able to deliver their hardware product, or not products that are as good as they should be. I think there's going to be plenty of hacking problems. I think there's going to be plenty of privacy issues, and again, problem solution. Some people will be able to figure out how to mitigate all of this. But eventually, I think there's going to be a fantastic amount of value creation. As in any space, there'll be a handful of winners, but I think it's going to be a very exciting ride. And in 10 years from now, I think it's going to be what tends to happen in all the cycles. I think in 10 years from now, nobody will talk about the Internet of Things. Because the Internet of Things will have become a part of the fabric. It will have become completely ubiquitous. And as all technologies that are ubiquitous, then they will disappear because everything will be connected. So I think it's a really fun area. I think whether you work in a large company or are interested in entrepreneurship, or in a large company interested in partnering with entrepreneurs, I think it's only starting and going to be a lot of fun. So I want to encourage all of you guys to learn about it, read about it. And as I mentioned, I run this monthly event called Hardwired NYC. So if you're here, please join us. It's a free event, and we're having the very best speakers in the field come and speak to the community every month. So,
Great. Thank you, Matt. Unfortunately, we don't have any times for question, but I'm sure you'll be here, and people can find you after there.
Thank you very much.